Hello, and welcome to the Cebu webinar, How to Set Up Your First Budget. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Cindy Perman. I'm a longtime journalist, formerly with CNBC and WSJ. My passion is service journalism, helping people with fundamental parts of their lives, like money and careers. My favorite groups of people to talk to about these subjects are college students and early career professionals. Why? Because the decisions that you make right now and the habits you form when it comes to money are going to set the foundation for everything else that comes after this. Now, for those of you who are in college right now, you need money for everything from buying books to eating out. When you graduate and you're on your own, life's going to come at you fast. You're going to need money for everything from renting your first apartment and buying your first car, moving, and you have to know how much you can afford for each one of those. Plus, if you took out student loans, you're going to have to start paying those back in a few months. You're going to want to cover all of your essentials, plus extra for fun things like going out to eat, to a concert, or on vacation. Now, a lot of college students, and I was totally guilty of this, say, I'm not good with money or I'm not really into money. Well, regardless, everyone needs money and everyone needs to learn how to manage it so that you have enough now and for everything you want to do after this. So if you're watching this and you're like, I don't know anything about money or budgeting, don't worry. A lot of college students don't. And we're not actually here to call you out for that. We're here to help show you that it's actually really easy and how to get started. And I thank you all for showing up today, because showing up and just starting to learn is the first step. So in order to help you out with this, we have lined up an all-star panel to be able to help you set up your first budget, plus tips for things like how to save money and stick to that budget. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our panelists. Stacy Francis is a financial advisor and the founder of Francis Financial, as well as the nonprofit financial education organization Savvy Ladies. She's also the host of the Financially Ever podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks for being here, Stacy. Robert Farrington is the founder of thecollegeinvestor.com, a personal finance and investing site dedicated to helping college students and young adults get out of student loan debt, master their personal finances, and get started investing.
Right. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thanks for being here, Robert. Dariana Davis is a reporter for Forbes Media and a 2023 graduate of Howard University. Dariana interned at CNBC when I was there and wrote about how to set up your first budget for CNBC's College Voices series. So she can tell you what she learned in that process. And because she's living that next step of life, when you get out of college and managing your money and your budget, she can help tell you what it's like to navigate that budget, paying off student loans, and all the things that she's experiencing in that first year after college. Hi, Dariana.
Hi, thank you all so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. Okay, and also joining us today, I'm very excited, are students from Southern Methodist University and their professor, Jake Batzel, who in addition to being a professor, also chairs the education committee here at Cebu. Hey, you guys.
How's it going? Can't wait to learn today and ask questions and have a conversation.
Thank you. Great to see all of you. All right. So thank you everyone too at home for joining us. And thank you to Cebu for making this panel possible. We will leave some room at the end for questions. So if you have them, please drop them in the chat, or you can just raise your hand and we'll get to them. So let's talk about money. Stacy, I'd like to start with you. Why is budgeting important? And what are a few steps that we can take to set up a budget? Like, is there an easy formula to use to set up a budget?
All right, so budgeting is important because of this. Now, I don't know if you guys do this. How many people, raise your hand, step on the scale once a week? Do I have any other people that step on the scale, kind of just see what's going on? All right, what about you students? Please tell me it's not just the adults. All right, well, the reason we step on a scale, see, you guys are all fit. When you get to our age, you'll be more concerned about staying fit. But what's great about a scale is it lets you see. And you know what? As much as I'd love my scale to lie to me, it doesn't lie. Well, that's what budgeting is all about. It's like being real and seeing where your money goes. And for most college students, our money goes to eating out, gas, clothing, entertainment. From some students, it might even be going for housing. And of course, paying for college. And we're going to be talking about credit down a little bit down the line, but it's really important to just see where your spending is. There's no judgment. And as far as the best apps, we'll be talking about some of those too. But again, the reason why this is so important is that psychology-wise, while a budgeting app doesn't lie to you, we lie to ourselves, and we lie to the tune of usually underestimating our spending by as much as underestimating by 25%, and even some cases you might be underestimating by as much as 50%. And I will tell you, adults don't have this figured out either. We had a client who gave us her budget, $8,000 a month. Well, we actually went through her credit cards. What do you think? How much off she was? Any guesses? 10,000 a month, put your hand up. Anyone think that she was spending 15,000 a month? Did anyone think that she was spending $20,000 a month? It was $20,000 a month. She underestimated her spending by more than double. So that's why getting a budget, seeing what you're actually spending is so darn important. Thanks, Cindy.
That's great, Stacy. I really appreciate it, because I do think that sometimes if you do screw up with money, you think, oh, it's just me, I'm the screw up, or I can't get ahead of it, and I think just like getting on the scale, just like seeing where you're at, there's no shame if you do it wrong, right? Just as long as you're paying attention to it and making an effort to get back on track before it snowballs, and then it's much harder to get back.
Right, and I'll jump in with that, Cindy. Trust me, adults don't necessarily have this figured out. That's why you sitting right now to learning about this is so important. I will tell you the number of people who I meet that make 6 figures in salary and have no savings, even have debt, right? And it's because they weren't sitting in this classroom that you are right now, learning about this really important stuff.
Yeah, it's I think that's really helpful to know, especially when students are starting out. Is there, Stacy, a formula that you might recommend, or just like some way to get started on budgeting?
So a great formula I love, it's I like numbers. So it's the 50-30-20 formula. It's not foolproof, but it's a great rule of thumb. So when you are spending, we recommend that about 50% of all your spending is going to go towards the most important things, the non-discretionary, the things that have to happen. That's utilities, that is housing, food, and then 30% going towards the fun things. And I'm going to say food again, but here I'm putting in eating out. So don't think that fun eating out is going into that 50%, right? It's eating out, entertainment, going to football games, tailgates, gifts, things like that, vacations. And then 20% is savings. Now, that's a huge number. For some people, they're not in a place to be able to save 20%. Maybe it's 20% paying off debt because you are graduating with student loans. The average student loan someone has that's a public loan is a little over $30,000. If it's private, we even see numbers as high as $50,000. So it would be going towards that. But I want to tell you, don't let the 20% scare you. I started this 20 years ago, and I could save 1% of my salary. That's it. It took me 20 years to be able to get up to that 20%. And what I did is every time I got a raise, every time I started to earn more, I gave my savings a raise first. Because what happens when you have money in your pocket? Or what happens if you're studying and you have Godiva chocolates on your desk? You eat them, right? If you have money in your pocket, you spend it. So that's why you need to make that first step again, get that money working for you. And I will tell you, this is the most fundamental things you can do. Pay yourself your savings first. If you do that, you're going to know more than 90% of Americans walking today. And when I say Americans, I mean people who are 3 times, even 4 times your age.
That is great advice, Stacy. Thank you. And I like that there's numbers to that, right? 50, 30, 20. And then I also like that if I don't have that 20%, I think sometimes it's daunting. And I think a lot of times college students say, I don't have money, so I'll worry about budgeting when I start making money. But that's why now is the most important time to get started so that you're building these habits so that, Stacy, like you were saying, right, as you start to make more, those habits were in place, right? So you started at 1%, you didn't have 20%. I think a lot of people can relate to the 1%, right? Especially when you're in
Exactly.
college and you're working a part-time job. And so now, as we're all thinking about getting started, we have a little bit to work with, 50, 30, 20. Robert, I want to go to you. Some students might just be like, oh, I hate money. I hate talking about money. I don't want to spend the time on this. Is it hard, and does it have to take a long time to set up a budget and get organized with your money?
I mean, budgeting can be hard, but I like to remind people that the math of all of this you learned in first and second grade. If you can add and you can subtract, you can create a budget. The hard part of a budget is when you're looking at that scale, you're looking at those numbers, you're actually having to confront your own behaviors. Like, we all know how to lose weight. We all know that if we eat right and we skip that dessert, like, the scale will go down. Well, the same is true with your budget. When you're looking at these numbers, it's not the math, it's not the numbers. That's not the hard part of budgeting. It's that we have to really define what's important to us and what choices we want to make to achieve our goals. Now, I always like to think of it as like a value set proposition. Like, we're all different. We all have our own individual styles and behaviors. Some of us might value going out to eat and having those fancy dinners with friends. And, I'm a foodie. So, like, you tell me we're going to a really nice restaurant, like, I'm into it. But, if you're like, hey, we're going to sit at home and watch Netflix and shows, like, I'm not into it. Like, I could cancel all my streaming services. That's a waste to me. I'd rather take that extra like $50, $100 and go out and have a nice meal. So when you're looking at your budget, it's really important to align it with your values. The other thing is when it comes to this math of budgeting, you have a number, right? Like, you know what you earn and you know what your expenses are, and you're trying to get to hopefully that 20%. But let's get to break even, and then let's go from there. Well, you have 2 real levers you can pull. You have the lever of, I can cut expenses. And that's what we were just talking about. I can cut the Netflix. I could eat out less. And the fact is there is a limit to how much you can cut. You're not going to be able to cut to zero because you still got to live. You still have to eat. You still have to get to work and to school. So there's no way you're cutting that budget to nothing. You can maybe cut out some fluff for sure. We all can, but you're not going to zero. But you also have this other lever of earning more. And I think that's dismissed a lot when we have these budgeting conversations. And it's honestly one of my favorite things. When I was in college, I worked 32 hours a week and I side hustled and I added money to my budget, which then allowed me to achieve the goals I wanted to, which was going out to eat and doing other fun stuff, right? So I really want you to remember that. And it's a value set. Like, what do you want to do at night? What do you want to do on the weekends? Is it that you really need that time to relax and spend decompressing and you want to spend money? And that's fine. But do you have enough income to support that? Or do you want to spend 4 or 5 hours on a weekend earning some extra money so that you could unlock other parts of your budget? There's no right or wrong. It's a value set question. Some people are all about the scrimping and saving. Cool. Some people are all about the hustle and the earning more. Cool. But when you figure out your budget and you have that math there, you can start making some personal decisions to improve your situation for yourself. So that's kind of my thoughts, Stacy. Thanks. Or Cindy.
Thanks, Robert. I really appreciate that, because I think, a lot of times you read these articles about you need to cut out these $6 lattes or avocado toast or all these things that we're calling people out for being expensive. So what you're saying is, maybe that is what I like. Maybe that's what is important to me. So maybe I think maybe like you said, maybe streaming isn't important, or maybe it is. So I think that's a really good thing for everyone to take away from this, to just really start to think about what your priorities are. And then really make that list and think about, what are the things I don't want to give up on? What are the things that I could maybe give up on and bring back later? Like, I like streaming, but do I need streaming right now? Or vice versa? For me, I'm the opposite of Robert. I would rather have my money on the stay home stuff, and cook at home than the eating out and going out. But again, that's what it is, right? You figure out who you are and what your priorities are. So that's really great advice. Dariana, you, when you were at CNBC, you wrote about budgeting, and you admitted then that you really didn't know much about budgeting. You knew you should have a budget, but you didn't really know much. So my question for you is, one, was budgeting hard? And what did you learn? Like, how did you start? Like, what advice could you give to students who are just starting out based on your experience setting up a budget? And by the way, I'm going to drop her article into the chat if everybody wants to read it. You can take that home and read it later. It's a great article on budgeting.
Yes. Well, again, thank you all for having me. So I would say similar to like what Cindy just expressed, I didn't know much about budgeting before writing this article. I started budgeting after writing it and applying the information that I received from being in conversation with so many experts. I think the challenge of budgeting was that I was telling myself that I had to have a certain income in order to actually save money or to properly manage my money. And that's not necessarily the case. So I was getting a refund check at the beginning of each semester. But because, like what Stacy was saying, a lot of students put money towards housing. I had a full tuition scholarship, but I had to get outside scholarships and a few loans to cover my rent. So all of that money went to a specific savings account, similar to what the experts recommended, having a separate checkings and savings so that you actually save. So I had that money in a certain account and I would never touch it until the first of the month. And I also worked a part-time job or just internships and fellowships that paid me a certain amount every week. And that money would go towards my transportation. So I would have to get to the job and spend a few dollars on the DC Metro, because that's where I went to school. So spending a lot of money on transportation as well as just groceries on a week-to-week basis. Those were my priorities: rent, groceries, and transportation. And then the leftover money was for whatever I wanted it to be, but not approaching it with that mindset, and kind of making smarter choices about what I wanted to spend the money on. So some things that I valued during my senior year was being able to spend those last few months with friends. I didn't want to not be able to go to Chesapeake Beach because I didn't have the money to go. So definitely it was a challenge starting off, approaching it with like a scarcity mindset and telling myself that I don't have enough money to budget, and definitely taking the approach of whatever I have can be properly managed and saved with the right tools.
I'm so proud of you for just starting and for figuring that out. And it's so impressive to see where you've come from now. When you first started saving, like Stacy was talking about, like she started out being able to save 1%. Were you able to save that 20%? Because you followed the 50-30-20 rule, right? When you were, but you didn't quite have 20%.
Yeah, I wanted to start with that, but it wasn't, working. So we started small, $5 every paycheck. And then, we progressed a little bit more. Now that I made once I started making a little bit more money, I say like, $50 every time I get paid. Bump that up, maybe like $80 every time I get paid. Just making those adjustments as I start to earn more money and as I get more comfortable with my own spending habits.
That's so impressive. And that's really just living what Stacy was talking about, right? Because I think that's the thing. When we talk about budgeting, you think it's an adult game. And you think, if you don't have a lot, why should I do that? But as you see that, building that habit, and you were ready to go, right? For starting with $5, that's all it takes, right? Building that habit. So that's fantastic. So Professor Batzel, I know you have a couple of students who dabbled in setting up a budget. Wondering if you can introduce a couple of your students, and then ask them to tell us what they've done in terms of budgeting, what tips they might have for other students, and if they have any issues or questions for our experts.
Sure, great. And I will say that actually last week we read Dariana's story in class, and some of these tips that she gathered were really helpful as we, kind of, took stock of how we spend money but I do have a couple of students here to introduce you. The first here is Kirk, and Kirk has an approach to budgeting, but also has some questions about maybe some room for improvement. So Kirk, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kirk, and I'm a junior here at SMU studying journalism and computer science. So considering budgeting, I have like a set amount of money I set to my savings account and checking account. So for every semester, I have a certain amount. I won't go past my checking account, and that's like the money I want to spend during the semester that I will not go past. But then we read Dariana's article and we saw like it's not advisable to have the same account, like the same check-ins and saving account with the same bank, because oftentimes I fall victim to the, you know what, I'll just get some extra for my savings account. It's like 2 clicks away and I'll transfer the money into my checkings account. I might like get over like that budget I set for myself for the semester. So like just asking for like additional tips to that to like help like quell that spending, that overspending, and stay within that budget.
Yeah, I can jump in. And you know, it goes back to those Godiva chocolates. You can see I like chocolates. All right, so it's about out of sight, out of mind. And so no problem with the checking and savings at your same bank. That's fine. But the money that you have in savings, you know, if it is a significant amount, I would open up an online high interest yield, high interest savings account. And there are a lot of great places out there. I think some of the best, and again, everyone speaking here, please unmute if you have a few, but Capital One often is quite high, Ally, ALLY. And where you can go to see the highest rates being paid out is Bankrate, BANKRATE.com. It's a great resource. And what's nice about it, number one, is you're not going to be nearly as tempted to transfer, because it actually for a lot of online accounts, it can take a day or two. But also your money's going to be working harder for you, because at these online companies, I mean, right now, some of them are paying like upwards of like 4%. It's phenomenal. So great opportunity for you to be able to do that. Yeah. What about you, Robert?
I was gonna say, I'll chime in. Very similar, you know, get a high yield savings account online. The best rates now are even like 5.25%. So, you know, I used to do the same thing. You get your refund and it comes to your account, and that's like you're spending money for it. And that can be, I don't know, it's probably a few $1,000s, maybe up $5,000-$6,000. It could be a significant amount of money. What I would do is I would only keep in my checking account what I need for this month, and I'd keep the rest of it in that savings account. One, you're putting it all to work, but then two, you start feeling the pain if you're overspending, because that balance gets lower and lower and lower. And so you have to start being more mindful of it every single month. And it's almost like giving yourself a paycheck, right? So like on the first of the month, you transfer in what you need for the month and you leave the rest in the savings account. But that way you can really kind of get in this bucket mindset. Like, this is all I have for this month. How am I going to plan it out? And you know, we all make mistakes. Maybe you go over a little bit. You can always save yourself and transfer it. But I promise you, after you do it for like 2 or 3 months, it starts becoming very second nature and knowing exactly what you have for the month.
Thank you guys for that advice. And thank you, Kirk, for sharing that story. I don't know if you guys have thought about high interest saving rate, high yield savings rates is what they're called. But it's high interest rates. So if you do set up a savings account at your own bank, my challenge for you is to check what that percent is, what that's going to make back for you. And then to go to a site like bankrate.com. It's not the only one, but it's a really good one. That's the one that I use. It's one Stacy mentioned, which I dropped in the chat, to find out where some of the highest rates are. Because if you don't need that money for, say, this semester, you know, you put what you need in for this month or whatever, if you don't need all of that, it can be making money for you. And you should just do the calculations, even just a set amount at 4%, what you could be making. And then another really important term that we get into when we talk about budgeting is compound interest. You know, if you make 4%, you know, annual percentage rate on something, as you make interest each month, you're going to be the interest that you've made is going to be part of your new sum, and you're going to keep making more. So it's really of value to you to put your money. Oh, thank you, Robert, for dropping your guide into the chat as well. Some great advice.
Well,
there.
And I wanted to mention too, we compare it. So, you know, you might bank at Chase, you might bank at Wells Fargo. Well, Chase is only paying 0.01% on their savings account today. And Wells Fargo is only at what point? Oh, they'll give you 2.5% if you have $1 million. Otherwise, you don't get anything. And so, you might use these banks that you have originally, and they're fine for checking and stuff, but the online savings accounts, 5% plus right now for almost every single one. I love my Ally and Capital One, but they're always like a good 1% off because they're so popular. They won't give you the best rates. They'll give you a good rate, but not the best rate.
Yeah, and if you look at those sites, like we were talking about Bankrate or other ones or Robert's Guide, a lot of times when you see these advice or comparison for high yield savings accounts, you can also find which ones don't require a minimum. Because if you're a college student, you might be like, I don't have $5,000 to put into a savings account right now. That's okay. Whatever you have, you can put in there and be making money. And the thing about a high yield savings account versus other types of investments, and this is why that's a really great thing for us to be telling you guys about, for college students to be thinking about and early career adults to be thinking about, because that money is fluid, right? It's not like a CD or another investment where you're locked in for a certain time period, right? It's fluid. So why wouldn't you be making money on it as opposed to just leaving it in your checking account? And then, to Kirk's point and other people's points, what we've been saying is like, once that money is not in your checking account, first of all, it's making money for you and you almost don't want to touch it, right? Because you're like, you kind of want to game yourself, right? And try to make as much as you can, to not take it out. But then it's also not your money because it's not in your checking account. So that helps keep it separate for you. So this is some great advice, you guys. Thank you so much. I encourage all of you to, when you leave here, check your savings rates from your bank. Like what Robert was saying, it might be like 0.5%, and then go to a site like Bankrate and find, what the comparisons are. And it's going to be, 4 or 5%. And why wouldn't you put your money there? So, okay. So Professor Batzel, you have another student who is willing to share her budgeting story.
Yes, so right behind Kirk here is Lauren, who's been thinking more about budgeting lately and has a question as well. So,
hi, my name is Lauren. I'm a senior here at Southern Methodist University. I typically don't really budget that much, but I've been starting to look into it a little bit more, checking just like my bank app, seeing how much I have before I go shopping or anything. I was wondering what the best way to structure my first budget would be. Like, should I do it in an Excel spreadsheet? Should I have it printed out in like a binder? Is there apps I can use? Like, how should I structure it off?
I feel like, Robert, you can jump in too. What are your favorite apps? And
Well, I love this one because the only way that you will stick to your budget is if you figure out how to budget in a way that works for you. So I'm an app person and I love the apps because I'm a technology kind of first guy. So, there's different ones. There's free ones, Mint and Empower, which used to be called Personal Capital. They're two great ones. But there's also some paid ones out there that are really great, like Monarch. You Need a Budget, YNAB. Those are some very popular ones as well. But if you're not an app native person, look at something that really is native to you. If you're an Excel spreadsheet person, create that Excel spreadsheet. There's also some apps that can integrate to like download right into an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet like Tiller. Because if you try to budget using a tool that you're not like native to, it's not going to work for you. And I also say, if you're a pen and paper person, do you like a pen and paper calendar and notes? Like, feel free to make like a spending journal or a piece of paper budget. Like, that's totally fine. The key is to knowing what you like to do. How do you take notes in school right now? Are you using a note tool app, or are you using pen and paper? Those are the things that will stick with you. And if you, like I said, figure out the tool that works in your natural behavioral like state kind of thing.
Robert, I just wanted to double check with that. So the second one you mentioned was Empower, EMPOWER.
Yep. So it used to be called Personal Capital, and of course they rebranded like all apps do. So they're called Empower, EMPOWER, and they're free. Mint is free. It's a popular one. But then there's some paid ones as well. Like I said, though, find the one that aligns with your own personality traits and style, because that's the one that you'll stick with.
Thank you. I just dropped those in the chat if anybody would like to write them down or look at them later.
And I'll chime in, but then I want to hear from Dariana too, like how you did it, right? But I 100%, Robert, you are so right on. This is right for everyone. But I'll give you a tip. something that I do is I once a month go over my budget to take a look. So I actually put that time in the calendar. I pour myself a glass of wine. If you're not legal, I'm not condoning underage drinking, and I just have one, because if I have two, then all of a sudden the budgeting looks a little fuzzy. But I light a candle and I make that commitment to myself once a month, just to review, right? So that's really important, in addition to doing it the right way. But Dariana, like, how did you do this, especially like working and being such a busy student? Because like, I feel like you have the most real, lifelike story to everyone who's sitting in the classroom today.
Yeah, believe it or not, the app's Mint was not working for me. So not pen and paper, but iPhone and the Notes app is what I used. Whenever I got paid, I split up where the money needs to go. So something that I do now is sort of the priorities, like you all said, bills or debt. For me right now, it's mostly debt and the loans that I have to start paying back by November. So I've been putting money to the side for that, or my most money to the side for that. And then having about 20% or so for things that I want to do throughout the month. More recently, it's been, going to concerts and seeing my favorite artists. So I recently bought a Coco Jones ticket. I'm excited. And then also putting about 10% down for like savings, investment, and retirement. So once I get paid and putting it out on the Notes app, this is what I need to pay for. These are the streamers or subscriptions that I have that I need to pay for. It's not that many, just a few. And then also like putting money to the side for my debt. That's at the top. And then the wants or desires that I have, that's in the middle. And then at the bottom is my savings, investment, and retirement account. So yeah, I use the Notes app, write everything down. I'm not quite ready for, having an automated app do it for me just yet, because I'm still learning. So I think my reasoning is just wanting to have the knowledge myself before I put it in the hands of something else.
Well, I'd like to say too, Dariana, that's awesome, because I think the other thing that people don't realize when you use the apps is almost all these apps are backwards looking. So they tell you what you did, but they don't necessarily help you get to where you want to go. And I think by using your Notes app, you're kind of taking it and then you're setting your goals for yourself and how you want to spend your money, which that's the more important part. Like, these apps are great. They'll categorize stuff for you, but now you need to take that history and like build your path forward based on that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Dariana. I actually use Notes for my budgeting too, because I want to try the apps. I do. But I'm a more tactile person, and I don't write a lot of things down anymore either. I used to, but yeah, so I do it on my Notes, and just keep checking in on it and making sure like I know where I'm at. So Robert, we talked a little bit earlier about cutting costs. Can you give students an example, like maybe a little bit of a starting point for ways that they can cut costs, but also like how to keep track of it? Like, can we just do it in our Notes app, or where should we do our priorities? Like, what are some good tips for that?
I mean, this is where it really gets personal, but there are so many ways to cut costs, and you really got to like kind of assess what your biggest spending ones are. So first off, I'll say for almost every adult in America, housing and utilities are going to be some of your biggest fixed expenses. So I would challenge you, like, can you save here? You might not be able to, but you also could say, like, do I get this single apartment for myself this year, or do I keep having a roommate? Maybe you do keep having that roommate for a couple years, or a second roommate, because that is a significant chunk of your budget and it really could free up a lot of money. But again, it's a trade-off, right? Like, it's a value set thing. You're going to have some people with you. So do you really want to do that? You also have things like utilities, right? The biggest, I think, is cell phones. And I mean, some of these companies, the big ones that we see out there, I mean, you could be paying 60, 70, 80, $100 a month. But then you also have like the T-Mobiles and like Mint Mobile with Ryan Reynolds, and you're like at like $15 a month for like the exact same service. And you can have your phone number there. So like, that's a $50 difference that you could be adding back into your, savings account every single month. And then you have like the traditional college expenses, right? We got like textbooks and supplies. Like, go online, comparison shop, use the library, buy used, consider renting them. There's a lot of ways to save on those expenses and, potential technology items there. That could be a big unexpected, especially in some of these like math and biology. Man, they're charging you like $150 for like a textbook, which is crazy. When you could maybe, if you're savvy enough, get to that library and be the one of the 3 that gets it, or, you could rent it as well. And then you also have your student discounts, like leverage that, especially with restaurants and bars and things in your area, like show them that ID card. Hey, I go to school. Like you might start racking up some discounts there. I mean, there's just so many ways to save. It's just so based on what you value and where you're spending your money. But look at the biggest buckets first before you dive into some of these smaller ones.
Dariana, when we spoke, we talked a little bit, we all have splurges. What are some of your biggest splurges and how have you addressed that? Like, have you been thinking about prioritizing? Are you trying to cut back on it? Like, how have you been juggling that?
Yeah, so senior year was pretty tough. And one of the things that I learned starting to budget and monitor my money was that I was a huge stress eater. So I'd be in the library or whatever building on campus studying or reading, and I'll just buy a ton of snacks, not even knowing how much I'm getting from the vending machine. I think one month I spent like over $100 just like getting snacks and things to eat because I just love having something to eat while I'm studying. So I think one of the ways that I addressed, or definitely one of the ways that I addressed it, was getting those easy to cook meals from like a Trader Joe's or Target or anything, any grocery store in your area so that I can prepare in the apartment that I had with roommates, just so that I can start eating more at home, eating breakfast, eating, having lunch, having dinner to eat once I get home. And then while I'm at school during the day, making a choice to maybe, get a full lunch, but not spending any more than $10 to $15 on that lunch. So food was definitely something that I had to cut back on. And even now, having graduated and working, still putting a cap on how much I'm spending on groceries and really only eating out when it comes to social gatherings.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you sharing your splurges. And I think a lot of students, and frankly, me too, can relate to the snacking a lot. So I think that's a good tip for other students to think about. So we're not saying if you like snacks, and obviously, you're studying, you grab a bag of chips, whatever. No one's saying don't hit the vending machine. And that's how Robert was saying earlier too. But just really be mindful of how much you're doing and how overboard you're going, and maybe dial it back a little bit, like, because there's some things you can cut out completely that you don't need to be doing, other things you don't want to give up, but maybe you want to keep in check. And so I think that's really one of the big takeaways of a budget is keeping yourself in check like that. So I think that's good. So snacks are still on the table, just to be clear. So Stacy, we've talked also about how important savings is, and we talked about how you didn't have a lot to save when you first started. But what do you say to students who are like, I don't make enough now to save. I'll save money later when I'm older. What is your advice for why they should save now?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you that that message, I hear that when people are in their 20s. I hear that same message when they're in their 30s. I hear it in their 40s. I even hear it in their 50s. And then they get to their 60s and they realize, oh no, I have nothing, right? And the challenge is that if you're graduating from college, the median income you're going to have is about $68,000. Now, of course, that really depends. Depends if you're going into nonprofit. Depends if you're going into journalism versus computer science versus medical field. But, when you look at the number of people graduating college, we have, of course, the highest number of people graduating with college student loans, which can be upwards of a year's worth of your salary pre-tax. But on top of it, we're seeing the highest number of students who are graduating with credit card debt. And credit card debt is at, it can be 15%, it can be 20%. I've even seen credit cards at 29% beyond. So it can really put you in the hole financially, essentially having to have you climb out to even get to even keel. So it's, again, so important that you're thinking about your future, because all the decisions you make now impact the options that you have in the future. I've talked to so many people who have, earned significant incomes throughout their whole life, who are so burned out that are having medical issues. They can't step back in their career, let alone even think about retiring. And so what I really want every person to know is that people who are financially successful and financially secure, it actually is less about the amount of money they make. Yes, huge, and that's important. But the number one factor is how much they spend. And I love it. Warren Buffett is a great example. On an up day, he would go to McDonald's and he would get a 2 egg sandwiches. On a down day in the market, he would go and he would get 1 egg sandwich. And his car is about a 20-year-old car. All right. So if anyone can afford it, it's Warren Buffett, right? But he chooses to live his life a certain way. And because of that, he's amassed great wealth. But there are other people in life who have made just as much money as him, who have not even a fraction to show about it. It's not necessarily always what you make. It truly is about what you spend and why what you're doing now is so darn important.
It really is to think about building those habits now so that you aren't in your, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes students feel like we're calling them out, right, for not being on top of it or not having a lot of money or whatever, but really people struggle with that at all ages. And so, we're just trying to help everyone get on track and start off on the right foot. Dariana, could you tell us a little bit about how you started saving in college and then sort of how you're doing it now? And if you have any questions about that for our experts, feel free to jump in and ask some questions.
Yeah, so I hopped on the Ally train. I know Robert just said there are better ones, but I started with them because that's who I learned about when I was reporting on this story that I covered. So I started with them, and like I said, like Kirk mentioned in the story, one of the experts recommended having the checkings and the savings as separate accounts. And I think that really helped me because I was trying to get my money out of there one time and it took like 3 to 4 days. I was like, okay, thankfully I didn't really need it. It was just something that I was using for something else. But yeah, definitely using Ally and starting really small. So the good thing about Ally, it has like a 4.25% yield, and you don't have to start with like necessarily anything in there. I think I started doing a little challenge where you put like $30 in January, and then I want to say it was like 40 in February, like, those monthly challenges that you see on social media to help you with saving. So I started doing those. And now that I have like a consistent income, I started putting a little bit more in every time I get paid. So now I'm at like $160 a month, $100 to $160 a month that I save. And of course it grows over time because of the interest rate on it.
Great job. I am so impressed with that. That really is what it, starting from whatever you have, but then making sure you keep just upping your game and upping your game and upping your game and then watching it grow, which is really exciting. So that's wonderful that you just graduated. That's the thing. You're not even like, well into your career. You just graduated in May and you're already at this place. So bravo. That's wonderful. Did you have any questions for the experts on your journey, spending, saving, budgeting?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm really concerned about throughout this journey is building credit. So I was one of those people who was in bad credit card debt. We got better. We got way better. But I wanted to just like talk to you all a little bit about, best ways to build credit and best practices for building your credit limit, as well as some myths that you all have seen out there. I know I've seen some on TikTok, FinTok, whatever, just like lies about credit. So just any tips you all have about that.
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, honestly, building your credit is just a reflection of your financial history of your credit cards. So, it's based on, making on-time payments, which I want to say is like 35% of your credit score. So like just make your monthly payment on time every time. The next part is like utilizing your credit. So, you want to have some credit and you want to keep it as low or zero balance as possible. So I know one of the myths out there is like you should like keep $10 or some silly arbitrage amount on your credit card. It's like, no, just pay off your credit card in full on time every month. What I also don't think a lot of people realize is things like utility bills, cell phone bills, things like that. Those count for your credit, even if you don't necessarily think so. So missing a late payment on that can also ding your credit score. So just make on-time payments on all your stuff. And I promise you, you'll see your credit score rise. And if you have debt, pay it off. And, the lower that balance gets, and as soon as it gets to zero, you'll also see your credit score rise. I think what gets a lot of people freaked out is when you use a free credit score tool like Credit Karma or Credit Sesame, they're not using your real credit score. They're using like these Vantage scores and different variations. And those things go haywire when you like pay off debt. So you'll see some of these people, they're like, oh, I paid off my debt and my credit score dropped like 50 points. And it's because these random tools that are free are putting out bad information. Your real FICO score that like a lender uses updates every single day. And you don't get to see it unless you pay. And it will accurately reflect what your balances are and stuff. But it is a paid service, and that's why you don't see it. But like banks and lenders that care do see it. So make your payments on time, pay off your debt, keep those things at zero. There's little hacks and tricks you can use if you want to boost your score. For example, if you use your credit card like a debit card, you pay it off before the statement closes, so it posts a nice zero. That'll raise your score as well. Things like that. But really, it's just all about your habits. Make your payments on time. You'll see a nice score.
And Dariana, things I would do. So MyFICO, MyFICO, is the website where you can actually get the proper credit score. And if you want to get a copy of your credit report, go to annualcreditreport.com. There you can get a copy of all 3 reports. It's actually a fantastic way of monitoring that you're not, a victim of cybersecurity, any of those issues too. It's great to be able to stay on top of it. And the other thing is I've worked with some women through Savvy Ladies. Savvy Ladies is a nonprofit that I started. It's a great resource. We have 250 financial literacy courses, every financial topic you can imagine. But we've worked with a good number of women who have successfully used the education that we provide to pay off their credit cards and be debt free. And then they've closed their credit card. The problem is if you close your credit card, it actually will hurt your credit, because one of the factors that adds to your credit score, in addition to what Robert said, is paying on time, actually using it, paying it off, is how long your credit history is. And I'll give you an example. My husband came to the United States from London in '99. He worked at Goldman Sachs. At the time, his income was 6 times the size of mine. He out-earned me that much. Guess what? He could not even get a cell phone because he had no credit here in the United States. He had just moved over. And here he is. He's now dating me. He was over here and I scooped him up before he could get into the dating pool of America. And I had to co-sign his cell phone for him. Now, looking back, FY, you shouldn't be co-signing any cell phone things with your person you're dating. Now, granted, we've been together 24 years, so it was a good bet on my part, but I would have told someone else, like, what the heck are you thinking? But again, it comes down to really share that point that the length of your credit history does matter. And so doing it now is really important. You may have a hard time getting a credit card. If so, just open up a secured credit card. And that's something where you give them a certain amount of money. Let's say it's, $2,000, and then you have that to be able to spend. And then once it depletes, you have to re-up it. And then that adds to your score. And eventually you may be able to get a credit card that is, actually a proper credit card.
Thank you guys. That's really great advice. So if anyone who's tuning in has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to go back to SMU now. Professor Batzel, your students have a few questions for our experts.
Yes, we do. Here is Emily to ask the question.
Hi, my name is Emily Castle, and I'm a senior here at SMU. So I was wondering, how much should we allocate to a 401k, and when should we start?
I love it. I mean,
we have a lot of seniors in this class starting their first job.
My biggest regret is not starting and putting more into my 401k as early as possible. So my answer to you is put as much as you possibly can in as early as you can and save until it hurts. But I know that's not practical advice. I would at least shoot to, if your employer offers a match, definitely shoot for that 100% from day one, because by not taking advantage of your employer's match, you're literally giving yourself a pay cut and you're leaving free money on the table, and you should never leave free money laying around. So that should be your starting goal. And then you can look at ramping it up beyond that. But if your employer offers a match, get to that level first. And I'm sure Stacy has some more thoughts there as well.
Yeah, so I love 401ks. The one thing I want to build on, ask if they have a Roth 401k option. So in the past, you only had one option really, and it was a regular 401k where, let's say you put $100 in. Well, the positive is if you made $50,000, you're only going to be taxed that year on $49,900. Essentially, you get that $100 tax free. But guess who's there when you take it out when you're age 72 or beyond? Well, the IRS, and you have to pay taxes on that money as if it came to you in your paycheck, which is pretty hefty. That means that you could be taking $1 out, paying the IRS 40 cents and only pocketing 60 cents. So there is another option, and it's called a Roth 401k. And I love the word Roth. And the reason why I always remember it, because Roth is really, really good. You put money in, and there's no benefit now. You don't necessarily get, you're paying a full on that 50,000 that you're making. But the money that you put in is growing tax free. And so that $100 can double, triple, quadruple, you get it out tax free. And the reason why this may be a better thing for you is that for most of us that are starting off our career, we're kind of in a low tax bracket. We're not making that much money. At least I know that was the case for me. So the tax benefit of only paying taxes on $49,900 versus the tax benefit of paying on $50,000 was really not that much. And I will tell you that, again, the Roth IRA or Roth 401k that we're talking about is one of the best ways that you can save for your future.
Thank you. Professor Batzel, do you have any other questions from students?
I do believe Lauren has another question.
I know we talked about picking a best savings account, how to pick a bank for our savings account. How do we pick the right credit card for us?
Great question. I know Robert has some ideas on this. So the way that I advise you to choose a credit card, the number one thing is, what interest rate am I paying? Right, that's very important. And looking at the fine print, if you're opening a new card and maybe transferring a balance, usually there's a fee to do so. So get out that magnifying glass or glasses like I have and read if there are any fees. So that's important. So the fee for transferring and then what the interest rate is ongoing. The next thing is I would look at, do you, want money back? So there are some cards where you get a certain amount of money back for your purchases. I have a United card, and I love it because what it does is it gets me into the United Lounge. And when I travel, I now get to go into the lounge for free. And then there are some other cards that are really great for using for frequent flyer miles, maybe for purchasing What I'll do is I'll save some of my actual miles that I accrue. And when the holidays come along, my holidays for a lot of it is free because I cash them in and I get cards like Amazon cards, Sephora, and then give them as gifts. FOI, don't tell this to anyone I'm giving these gift cards to. They now know the secret. But those are the things to think about. And also, I love the color of your top. It's my absolute favorite color. Those are some ideas. Robert, what do you think?
No, I love it. So I always like the credit card. I frame it in that you should only be using a credit card like a debit card. So I kind of skip the interest rate stuff because I highly encourage everyone to use a credit card, but pay it off in full every single month and build that habit. Because credit cards offer you more protection for your purchases. They offer you a little bit of a safety net, but then like you said, they offer these perks and rewards. So this goes back to like your personality and your style stuff. If you like to travel, if you like this idea of points, there's like a whole like microcosm of personal finance people that like love points and miles, and they will tell you like how you can fly to Paris first class and stay in hotels using points and miles. If that's your jam, like you can go down a rabbit hole. I'm a pretty simple guy and I use the Fidelity 2% cashback credit card. So why I love this card is it has no annual fee. So no fees. I love that. And then 2% of all my purchases just go right into my Fidelity brokerage investing account. And I don't have to think about it. It just happens every month. So like I'm just getting 2% back right into my investments and it's easy and I recommend it. And that was actually one of my earliest cards that I got right after college. Why I liked it is no annual fee. And so some of these points and miles cards, I mean, you can get like outrageous fees, but if you use it, I guess that works. But if you're thinking of your first credit card, keep it simple, no fees, find the best rewards that suit you.
Great advice. I did not actually know about the Fidelity 2% card. I'm gonna have to look into that actually. Mine is Amazon. I use Amazon because I really do like getting those points back and then being able to use it on whatever odds and ends things I'm buying from Amazon. So I could keep talking to you guys all day. This has been so wonderful. But alas, we are running out of time. So I wanted to just see if you had any maybe quick 30-second final words of advice for college students and early career professionals. Stacy, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I actually just want to do this. Halt. So whenever you think about buying something, halt. And that means don't buy when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, or you're tired. And I'll give you a great example. I was tired last week. I have a gala tomorrow. I didn't want to actually have to prep for what I was going to wear. So I went on Zappos and I put about 10 beautiful pantsuits costing in total about $1,000 in my cart. But I remembered halt, and thank God I did, because I didn't buy one of them. I took 24 hours cooling off period. Funny enough, I found the perfect outfit already in my closet, costing me $0. So that's what I'd like to say is halt, take a 24-hour cooling period. Never, ever shop when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, or when you're tired.
Oh my God, I'm totally doing that. I'm going to put a Post-it note up that says halt.
I know. People are going to wonder, like, what are you having to halt from? It's just spending. Don't worry, I'm cutting down.
Yeah,
I'm not doing anything nefarious. Nothing bad.
All right, Robert, what is your 30-second parting words of wisdom?
Yep. We talked a lot about budgeting and strategies, but it all comes down to just getting organized. Like, please, if you can take away anything from this, I want you to know 4 things. I want you to know what you own, what you owe, what's coming in every month, and what's going out every month. Without knowing those 4 things, you can't make good financial decisions to fix your situation, better your situation. You won't even know what your situation is. So just know what you own, know what you owe, know what's coming in, know what's going out. And that is the best starting point so that you can really tackle your financial future.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Like I say that like know your numbers, but that's perfect. Like to think of it that way, like just boom, boom, boom. Excellent. And then we halt. Okay, so Dariana, 30-second parting words of wisdom.
Yeah, my parting words of wisdom to you all as my peers. I was just in school with you all. I say make the budget work for you. So tandem with understanding what you owe, what's coming in and going out. Understand what your financial goals are, whatever you want to do, whether that's relocate after college or go back home. Just understand what your financial goals are, whether you want to buy a car. Be honest about what you have coming in and what you can do with it, and also assess areas in your life where you can cut back on spending and what you hold near and dear to you that you would like to put more money into.
And Dariana, I just want to give you a heads off. Like, you are such an amazing role model. Like, you rock. You rock. And I think it's phenomenal that you have done what you've done. And what I love best is that you've planned ahead. Like, you planned ahead for those snack times, right? And planning, not so easy to do, but that was a big part of what you did too. I wish I was as smart as you are at that age. I really do. I really do. Good for you.
We got to give it to Cindy and College Voices, honestly, because that's where it all
Yay.
started.
Thank you. No. No, but you know what? I mean, you can teach people all you want or share the information, but you did it, buddy. And I am so like impressed and proud of you for that. And that's why I really wanted to have you on here today, because I feel like you didn't know like a lot of students when you started, and like you're just a few months out of school and you're already there. So like, yeah, bravo, bravo. So sadly, we are out of time. This has been so great. I have loved this conversation. I could talk to you guys for another hour, but alas, we do not have that time. So thank you so much to our awesome panelists, Stacey Francis, Robert Farrington, Dariana Davis, Professor Jake Batzel, and all of the students from SMU. Thank you so much. I know that I've learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. Thank you also to Tess, Tobin, Desi, everyone at Cebu for making this webinar possible. If you want to rewatch this or share it for someone who wasn't here, a replay will be available in the next few days on cebu.org. You just have to click on the on-demand drop-down menu. And if you follow Cebu, that's SABEW on X, formerly Twitter or LinkedIn, they will post it there, and I will also share it. So by the way, take notes of all of us who've been here today, friend all of us on LinkedIn, follow us, like free advice when people are sharing things. So by all means, and we're all now part of your network. So thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. Don't forget to set up that budget and make smart choices about your money, because future you will thank you. So thank you. Take care and bye for now.